What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved stars sits down for what should have been a friendly chat, only to face the most hostile interview of his career? In just 37 seconds, everything went sideways. Graham Norton, the man who built his empire on charming celebrity guests, completely lost control and did something that shocked everyone watching. This is the exclusive inside story of how Keanu Reeves, the nicest guy in Hollywood, became the target of the most brutal on-air attack in talk show history. Last night, millions of viewers witnessed something nobody saw coming. The Graham Norton Show, usually a place where celebrities laugh and share funny stories, turned into a battlefield. And at the center of it all was Keanu Reeves, sitting calmly in that famous red chair, completely unprepared for what was about to hit him. It started like any other Friday night. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement. They came expecting laughs, celebrity gossip, and maybe some embarrassing stories. Keanu walked out with his usual humble smile, waving to the crowd who absolutely loved him. He looked relaxed, wearing his simple black suit, ready to talk about his latest movie project. Graham Norton welcomed him with what seemed like genuine warmth. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Keanu Reeves." The audience erupted in cheers. Keanu took his seat, shook Graham's hand, and settled in for what everyone thought would be another delightful interview. But something was different about Graham that night. Those who know him well could see it in his eyes. There was a tension there, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. Maybe it was the pressure from the network. Maybe it was personal issues. Nobody knew for sure, but something was definitely wrong. The first few minutes went normally. Graham asked about Keanu's latest film, and Keanu gave his usual thoughtful answers. He talked about working with the director, about the challenging stunts, about how grateful he felt to be part of the project. The audience was eating it up, laughing at his modest jokes and cheering when he mentioned giving his stunt bonuses to the crew. "You know, Keanu," Graham said, leaning forward with what looked like a friendly smile, "people always say you're the nicest guy in Hollywood. Is that something you work at, or does it just come naturally?" Keanu chuckled softly, the way he always does. "I just try to treat people the way I'd want to be treated. It's not really work, you know? It's just being human." The audience loved that answer. They clapped and some even cheered. But Graham's expression changed slightly. His smile became a little too tight, a little too forced. "Being human," Graham repeated, his voice taking on a slightly different tone. "That's interesting, because some people might say that level of niceness isn't really human at all. Some might call it fake." The studio went quiet. You could feel the energy shift. Keanu's eyebrows raised slightly, but he kept his cool. "I'm sorry. I don't understand what you mean." "Oh, come on, Keanu," Graham said, his voice getting sharper. "The whole nice guy thing, the charitable donations, the humble act. Don't you think it's all a bit much? A bit calculated?" The audience was stunned into silence. This wasn't the Graham Norton they knew. This wasn't how interviews were supposed to go. Keanu shifted in his chair, clearly confused by the sudden attack. "I don't think being kind is an act," Keanu said carefully, his voice still calm and measured. "I've never thought of it that way." Graham laughed, but it wasn't his usual warm laugh. It was cold, almost cruel. "Never thought of it that way? Really? So when you give away millions to charity, when you take pay cuts so other actors can get better deals, when you're photographed eating lunch alone on a park bench looking sad, none of that is for publicity?" The attack was getting worse. You could see Keanu processing what was happening, trying to understand why this interview had taken such a dark turn. His fans in the audience were starting to look upset. Some were even mumbling to each other, clearly not happy with how their hero was being treated. "I eat lunch on park benches because I like being outside," Keanu said, still trying to keep things light. "And I help people because it feels right, not for publicity. I actually try to keep most of that stuff private." "Private?" Graham's voice was getting louder now. "Nothing's private in Hollywood, Keanu. Everything's calculated. Everything's part of the image. And your image is being the sad, lonely, nice guy who everyone feels sorry for." That hit different. You could see it in Keanu's face. For just a moment, his usual calm mask slipped, and you could see the hurt. But he recovered quickly, like the professional he island. "I think you might have the wrong idea about me," Keanu said quietly. "I'm just trying to do good work and be a decent person. I don't know why that bothers you." The audience was getting restless now. People were shifting in their seats, looking uncomfortable. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was just mean. Graham was attacking one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood for literally no reason that anyone could understand. But Graham wasn't done. If anything, he was just getting started. His next words would push things even further over the edge. "Bothers me," Graham said, his voice dripping with fake surprise. "Oh, Keanu, nothing bothers me. I just think it's fascinating how you've managed to fool everyone for so long." The word fool hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Keanu's jaw tightened slightly, but he still kept his composure. The man was showing incredible restraint under what was becoming the most unfair interview attack in television history. And this was just the beginning. Graham Norton was about to take things to a place that would shock everyone watching and leave Keanu Reeves with no choice but to defend himself in ways nobody expected. "Fool everyone?" Keanu repeated, his voice still controlled but with a new edge to it. "I'm not trying to fool anyone, Graham. I'm just being myself." Graham leaned back in his chair with a smug expression. "Being yourself, right. The mysterious loner. The tragic figure. Tell me, Keanu, how much of your sad backstory is real and how much is just good marketing?" The audience gasped. Even the camera operators looked shocked. Graham had just crossed a line that nobody crosses in polite society, let alone on television. He was attacking Keanu's personal tragedies, the real pain he'd experienced in his life. Keanu went very still. His hands, which had been relaxed on the armrests, slowly clenched into fists. "My personal life isn't marketing material," he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice now. "Isn't it though?" Graham pressed on, clearly enjoying the reaction he was getting. "The lost love, the family struggles, the whole wounded soul thing. It's all very convenient for your image, isn't it?" You could hear people in the audience starting to boo, actually boo, at Graham Norton, on his own show. The producers in the control room must have been losing their minds. This was live television, and their host was destroying his own reputation in real time. "I think we should talk about something else," Keanu said, his voice tight with control. He was trying to save the interview, trying to give Graham a way out of the hole he was digging. But Graham wasn't interested in being saved. "Oh, we're not done yet. I want to know about the motorcycle accident, the one where your best friend died. How long after that happened did your publicist realize it would make great press?" The studio went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Graham had just done something unforgivable. He had taken Keanu's real grief, his actual loss, and suggested it was all fake for publicity. It was the cruelest thing anyone had ever said on live television. Keanu stood up slowly, not quickly, not dramatically, just slowly, like a man who had finally reached his limit. "That's enough," he said quietly. "Oh, is it?" Graham said, still sitting, still smirking. "Did I hit too close to home? Touch a nerve in the carefully constructed Keanu Reeves mythology?" "Sit down, Keanu," Graham continued, his voice getting nastier. "We're not finished here. I have a whole list of questions about your so-called generosity, like how you always manage to make sure the cameras catch you giving money to homeless people." But Keanu didn't sit down. He stood there, looking down at Graham with something in his eyes that nobody had ever seen before. Not anger exactly, but something deeper. Disappointment. And that somehow made it worse. "You know what, Graham?" Keanu said, his voice calm but carrying across the entire studio. "I came here tonight to talk about a movie, to share some stories, maybe make people laugh. I didn't come here to be attacked for trying to be a decent human being." The audience started clapping, slowly at first, then louder and louder. They were clapping for Keanu, showing him support and making it very clear what they thought of Graham's behavior. Graham's face was getting red now. His own audience was turning against him, and he knew it. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Oh, spare me the victim act. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle a few tough questions without playing the wounded hero." "Tough questions?" Keanu repeated, and for the first time, there was real disbelief in his voice. "You called my friend's death a publicity stunt. You turned my grief into a joke. That's not journalism, Graham. That's just cruelty." The audience was getting louder now. People were shouting things at Graham, not nice things. His own fans, people who had come to see him, were turning on him because of how badly he was treating their guest. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," one of the producers said over the intercom, trying to calm things down. But it was too late for that. Graham had opened a door that couldn't be closed. "You want to know what's real?" Keanu said, his voice getting stronger. "I'll tell you what's real. Losing people you love is real. Trying to honor their memory by being better is real. Helping people because it's the right thing to do is real. What's fake is this attack, this cruelty disguised as an interview." Graham stood up then, trying to match Keanu's energy. "Don't lecture me about fake, Keanu. I've been doing this show for years. I know a performance when I see one, and everything you do is a performance." "Then you don't know me at all," Keanu said simply. And somehow, those 6 words carried more weight than all of Graham's attacks combined. The two men stood facing each other across the coffee table. The studio audience was buzzing with tension. Camera operators were looking at each other, unsure whether to keep filming or not. The producers were probably screaming in the control room. "You know what I think?" Graham said, his voice getting even more vicious. "I think you've been playing the same character for so long, you've forgotten who you really are. The kind stranger, the generous star, the humble hero. It's all just another role." Keanu shook his head slowly. "I feel sorry for you, Graham. I really do. If you can't imagine someone being kind without an ulterior motive, if you can't believe in basic human decency, then you must live in a very sad world." That hit Graham harder than any insult could have. You could see it in his face. Keanu hadn't attacked him back, hadn't called him names or gotten angry. He had just expressed genuine pity, and somehow that was devastating. "Don't you dare feel sorry for me," Graham snapped, his composure finally cracking completely. "I see through your act. I see through all of it. And before this night is over, everyone else will too." The audience booed even louder. People were standing up now, some of them heading for the exits. Graham Norton had managed to turn his own studio audience against him. It was unprecedented. Keanu looked around at all the chaos, at the upset faces in the crowd, at the crew members who were clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. Then he looked back at Graham with something that might have been sadness. "This isn't who you usually are?" Keanu said quietly, his voice somehow cutting through all the noise. "I've watched your show. You're normally funny, warm, kind to your guests. What happened to that person?" For just a moment, Graham's mask slipped. You could see confusion in his eyes, maybe even a flicker of shame, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by even more anger. "That person," Graham said through gritted teeth, "got tired of fake people like you, making the rest of us look bad." And that's when Keanu Reeves finally reached his breaking point. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with something much more powerful: truth. Keanu took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. Every person in that studio, every viewer at home, heard every single word. "You want to know what makes people fake, Graham?" Keanu said, looking directly into Graham's eyes. "It's not being kind. It's not helping others. It's not trying to make the world a little better. What makes people fake is tearing others down to make themselves feel important. What makes people fake is attacking someone's grief for entertainment. What makes people fake is forgetting that the person sitting across from you is human." The studio was completely silent now. Even the people who had been booing stopped to listen. Keanu wasn't shouting. He wasn't angry. He was just speaking the truth. And it was more powerful than any argument Graham could make. "I've lost people I loved," Keanu continued, his voice getting softer but somehow more intense. "I've made mistakes. I've been sad, lonely, confused. I've also been grateful, happy, and amazed by the kindness of strangers. Those aren't publicity stunts. That's just life. And if sharing those experiences, if trying to honor the people I've lost by being better, if helping others because I can, if that makes me fake in your eyes, then I'm proud to be fake." Graham opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time all night, he had nothing to say. Keanu's honesty, his genuine emotion, had completely disarmed him. "But you know what?" Keanu said, and now there was something new in his voice. Not anger, but strength. "I don't think you really believe what you're saying. I think something happened to you. Something that made you forget that most people are basically good. And I'm sorry for whatever that was." The audience started clapping again, but this time it was different. It wasn't angry clapping or supportive clapping. It was the kind of clapping you hear when someone says something so true, so right, that you can't help but acknowledge it. Graham's face was bright red now. His hands were shaking slightly. He looked around the studio, at his own audience cheering for his guest instead of him, at his crew members who were clearly uncomfortable, at the cameras that were capturing every moment of his breakdown. "Stop," Graham said quietly, then louder. "Stop clapping." But they didn't stop. If anything, they clapped harder. Because Keanu Reeves, in the face of the most unfair attack in television history, had shown them what grace looked like, what real strength looked like. "I said stop," Graham shouted, and his voice cracked. Actually cracked, like a teenager whose voice was changing. The polished television host was completely gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and desperate. Keanu stepped closer to Graham, not in a threatening way, but like someone approaching a wounded animal. "Graham," he said gently, "this doesn't have to be who you are." "Don't," Graham said, backing away. "Don't you dare try to help me. Don't you dare be nice to me. Not after what I just did." And there it was, the admission. Graham knew he had gone too far. He knew he had been cruel and unfair. But instead of apologizing, instead of trying to make things right, he was doubling down on his anger because it was easier than facing what he had become. "It's okay," Keanu said, and he meant it. You could hear it in his voice. People make mistakes. People have bad days. People say things they don't mean when they're hurting. "I'm not hurting," Graham snapped, but his voice betrayed him. He was hurting. Everyone could see it now. This whole attack, this whole cruel interview, it hadn't been about Keanu at all. It had been about whatever was eating Graham up inside. "Yes, you are," Keanu said simply. "And that's okay too. But you don't have to take it out on other people." The studio was dead quiet again. Two men standing in the middle of a talk show set, one trying to help, one too proud and angry to accept help. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Graham looked around the studio one more time, at the audience that was clearly on Keanu's side, at the producers, who were probably already planning how to handle this disaster, at the cameras that had captured every moment of his professional suicide. "You know what?" Graham said, his voice getting dangerous again. "I don't need your pity. I don't need your understanding. And I definitely don't need you on my show." The audience gasped. Even after everything that had happened, they couldn't believe Graham was about to do what it sounded like he was about to do. "Get out," Graham said, pointing toward the exit. "Get off my stage. Get out of my studio. I don't want fake people like you here." The studio erupted. People were shouting now, really shouting. Some were yelling at Graham, some were cheering for Keanu. It was chaos, pure chaos on live television. But Keanu just stood there, calm in the middle of the storm. He looked at Graham with something that might have been sadness, might have been disappointment, but definitely wasn't anger. "If that's what you want," Keanu said quietly. He started walking toward the exit, his head held high, his dignity completely intact despite everything that had happened. "That's right, walk away," Graham called after him, his voice shrill and desperate. "Run back to your fake life and your fake friends and your fake charity work." Keanu stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back one last time. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see what he would do. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Graham," Keanu said, his voice carrying clearly across the chaos. "And I hope it makes you happier than this did." Then he walked off the stage, leaving Graham Norton standing alone in front of an audience that now despised him. Cameras that had captured his complete professional destruction and the knowledge that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. The audience kept booing as Keanu disappeared backstage. They booed as Graham tried to regain control of his show. They booed as he attempted to make jokes to lighten the mood. They booed until the producers finally cut to commercial, ending the most disastrous interview in television history. Graham Norton had gotten exactly what he asked for. He had kicked Keanu Reeves off his show, but in doing so, he had revealed something ugly about himself that no amount of charm or wit could ever cover up. He had shown the world that when you attack goodness itself, when you try to tear down someone for being kind, you